We're going to jump into the running back tier list now. We previously did the wide receiver tier list, and now we're going to do the running backs. Thing to keep in mind as we go through this is geared towards Dynasty. So you might see some people ebb and flow where you may go, well, they should definitely be higher than what they currently are. And I will sit here and argue with you that no, they are 30 years old. In Dynasty, their value is not as great, even though they may give you a fantastic year this year. All right. So I'm going to jump over to the tier maker, and we will start plugging some players in here. And then we'll give you a little bit of feedback on some people that we think are good grabs in each tier. If you watch our Dynasty run that we did already, that could also really help you guys if you guys are trying to decide who you want to take and where. But these are definitely the levels of quality these players are. So they're people that you want to emphasize. You'll notice this has nothing to do with ADP. And I think that says a lot about how we're ranking people, because there's some people you might see in tier A or tier B or tier C where their ADP is really low, meaning you could be getting some really good value because they are set to potentially perform pretty well. But all right, I'm going to jump in here. Anything you want to add, Sam?
No, I think there's a few people here where we'll call them out where there's some debate if they can go up or down a tier here. And again, we're factoring in youth and future production here as well. It's not just what we think they can do this year. That's maybe more relevant as we go further down the tiers, but we can kind of call that out there.
Yeah, and starting out here, we don't think the S tier is any surprise here. There's not much, really, in our opinion, that I think anybody would argue with us. These are definitely clear cut, the best three running backs in the league. And arguably in Dynasty, you could potentially argue that McCaffrey's getting on the older side at this point because he is. But I still think McCaffrey's a bit of an enigma, and I still think he's got a few good years left in him. Saquon, Jonathan, and Jahmyr, these are probably the top 6 RBs no matter how you spin it in the league right now. Jahmyr, in some tiers, you'll probably see him floating into the S tier. For some people, I can't warrant myself doing it. I like Gibbs. I think he's got potential. I still think he's going to get cannibalized a little bit by David Montgomery, especially alongside the end zone. And he's shown that health might be a bit of a concern.
Yeah, no, I mean, CMC, yeah, he's getting older, but last year he scored 80 points more than the second highest scoring running back. So we just know when he's healthy, he's a league winner. Until that falls off, I think even if he's 30 years old, you got to keep him in S tier. But I agree. Gibbs is a swing guy there, but I think the rest of A tier is pretty straightforward here.
Yeah, I just added in the other 5. I want you guys to understand, like, we're scaling this from left to right. So the people on the left are considered more valuable than the people on the right when it comes down to it's kind of going down a slope there. Kyron Williams, I think, is definitely the best out of the following 5. Pacheco and ETN, I think, are up for debate with each other. And for me, Achan is still like a later round running back for me. I'm not there yet. I think he's also going to be a victim of cannibalization with Mostert in the backfield and now Jaylen Wright potentially from what we're hearing. And then Rachaad White, who maybe some people might debate with me on this one, but the dude was a monster last year. I'm not going to drop him. He's young. Unless I see a huge downturn this year, he's still a good grab in PPR formats.
Well, I certainly hope you wouldn't drop Rachaad White. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, I think Achan and White are pretty interesting because they're almost like the reverse of each other. Achan
Sure.
was the most efficient back in the league, but didn't have a ton of volume because of Mostert, and now we're adding right to that mix there. And Rachaad White was super inefficient, but just had such a high passing and rushing volume that it made up for it. So, of the two, I like Achan better. I think Mostert has had a long history of being injured, and he's old. I like Achan's chance of kind of moving up towards the top of A tier by the end of the season.
Yeah, I don't think Mostert's going to be able to keep it up too much longer when it comes down to it. Where is our boy Jonathan Brooks? There we go. This is our B tier. Kenneth Walker, I believe, is by and far the best B tier back that's listed here. David Montgomery is here because he's just going to give you points no matter how you spend it. He's not old yet. He's a power back. He's going to get you touchdowns. He's going to perform, which is why we have two Lions running backs in the A and B tier back to back. Their offense is crazy, as everyone knows when it comes down to it. And then Jonathan Brooks, and I'll turn it over to you, Sam. You'll notice he's here at B tier. There's a good chance he'll be higher at some point. There's a good chance you might view him as lower. But in the Dynasty format, he was hands down the best running back in this most recent draft. The only negative thing he has going for him is we don't know when he's going to play, if at all, this year.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. I mean, Brooks is young. He's 21. Obviously, he came off an ACL tear late last year, so his production this year might not be fantastic. And he's probably one of those guys I'm already putting on my buy low kind of radar for 2025 because the Dynasty community is pretty fickle. Maybe he doesn't put up points this year and his value drops, so I'm going to call that out now. The other guy I'll mention, and you already kind of pointed out, is Walker. I think he's clearly the best guy in this tier. Last year, he didn't have the best of years, but Pete Carroll's gone now. We brought in Grob from Washington, where it's obviously a much more explosive offense. I think you can make the argument to even switch White and Walker here. I get based off last year's production, we're not going to, but I would be very surprised if next year Walker is not an A-tier dynasty back compared to some of these other names.
That all hinges on Seattle. Charbonnet, everyone keeps talking about Charbonnet is going to eat into him a bit, so that's going to be the big piece for him, right? And I do want to highlight Stevenson. I think Stevenson's going to have a bit of a return year this year with the new offensive scheme that the Patriots are putting together. And my least favorite thing in this section is James Cook. I don't like James Cook. There is not a single draft where I am taking James Cook. You couldn't pay me enough to take him. I don't think he's going to be great. I could be wrong. For his sake, I hope I'm wrong. But the dude I don't think he has it. But his performance towards the end of last year places him here in Dynasty, and he's young, and Buffalo's offense is a mess. And they need somebody.
I disagree with you a little bit on James Cook. Buffalo, again, like you just said, they don't have a ton of super established weapons. Cook did really have a good breakout year. He's not a great, red zone back, I'll give you that. So he's not going to get the goal line work. But he was super efficient pretty much all other areas of the field. So I think his volume will be high enough to kind of outweigh any lack of touchdown production that some of these other guys might get.
No, that's fair. I still don't like him. Let's see here. Who else are we adding? It didn't save some of the people for us real quick, so we'll load them in real quick. We got our boy Tyjae Spears, and we also are going to add in Jahmyr White into the C tier. The things you're going to see in C tier are vets that have performed and potential sleeper running backs that are going deeper in drafts. So Alvin Kamara, James Conner, Josh Jacobs, people that have just performed throughout their career, and we suspect that they will perform, but this is a Dynasty League, so their value drops. So their tier is dropping based off of what you're getting. I have no doubt in my mind that there's a good chance Kamara will be a top 7 running back, or at least a top 10. But the thing is he's getting older, and I'm expecting a fall off, the wheels to come off too. Same thing with James Conner. James Conner has been someone that goes really late in drafts and has performed almost every year when he wasn't hurt. So some of it's really comical, but then you look at someone like Tyjae Spears, who is a sleeper pick through and through, but he's slightly blocked by his counterpart, Tony Pollard.
Yeah, no, I think the two guys I'd call out here, one is Josh Jacobs. Kyle and I disagree on Jacobs for this year. I personally am a pretty big fan of him. I think last year was pretty rough. The Raiders' O-line was mostly terrible. So he saw a pretty big dip in production there, and they just couldn't really move the ball that well, at least for the stretches where he was even healthy there. I think this year he's in the Green Bay offense. I don't think he's going to just have stacked 8-man boxes against him. I think it'll open up a bit. We saw Aaron Jones kill it at the end of last season. I think Jacobs at this stage in his career is still more talented and a better running back than Jones.
Really?
At this stage in his career.
Their ages
Jones
aren't that far off.
29, 26, and running back world, that might as well be 20 years.
That's fair.
I like his chances to rebound a lot this year. And his value right now, in Superflex drafts, he's going like end of the 5th, 1 QB, end of the 4th. At the beginning of the season, he was going in like, the 3rd round, which was too high. But now I think his value is in a place where you can be pretty comfortable taking Jacobs there.
Okay. No, I can get behind that. Let's put these guys down here. We'll just fill this in. The D tier for us is definitely an area where you're going to see just older vets who we don't necessarily expect to perform at the level that they once were. And then some up-and-coming running backs and some things that some like running backs that we just don't see performing at the level that people might hope that they perform at. Like Joe Mixon, self-explanatory. He had an okay year last year. He could give you some stuff this year, but he is not getting any younger. Nick Chubb, we all know, blew out his knee last year, unfortunately. We'll be lucky if we get 75% of what Chubb was, especially at his age. He's not getting any younger. Mostert, we already touched on. He's 32. Hopefully he still gets those touchdowns. And as you just spoke about, Aaron Jones, he had a really good end of the year last year. If he's not hurt, I think he'll give a good season, but he's not getting any younger either.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I know Jones is talented. He puts up points when he's healthy. But how many games you get out of him this year, I don't really know. The Vikings obviously just lost Darnold. They didn't lose Darnold. They are now starting Darnold because they lost McCarthy for the year. So I don't know how many games they're going to be leading and leaning on.
Might be better off losing Darnold.
Yeah, probably. But the one guy in this tier, and he's been the biggest riser for me since we started this channel, since we've started filming anything, is Jaylen Wright. He's looked absolutely electric in preseason. He's got a bit of a bigger frame that Mostert and Achane don't really have. And we mentioned this when we talked about Achane, but Mostert's 31, 32?
32.
Forget. 32. That is, most running backs do not make it to that age in their career and still put up big numbers. Given his injury history as well, I like Wright's chances of being the number 2 running back in an offense that we know can put up massive numbers and can support 2 fantasy relevant running backs and 2 fantasy relevant wide receivers. So I'm taking my chance on him here, probably in your later rounds. And I think he could move up very rapidly in the following season.
Yeah, he's definitely got some long-term potential. Mostert is definitely like this year. And beyond there, I see Wright starting to eat into that stuff, barring an injury. Of course, obviously, if either Mostert or Achane get hurt, Wright's going to move right into the RB2 role no matter how you spin it. Lastly, we have our E tier, which is our boy Zeke, who is the RB1 for the Cowboys. Their running back room is so bad. And then we got Gus Edwards sitting down there in the E tier as well. I'm not a huge fan of Gus. I don't think the Gus bus is going to do much this year. We know, unless anything you want to add on those two.
No, it's just an opportunity thing. We wanted to put the 2 RB1s on the depth chart at least.
Yeah. We know we're missing a few too. Like Devin Singletary isn't here. We didn't want to get into the top 50. Obviously, we could have added a few people onto this tier list, like Singletary, like who's the other one? J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, there's just a handful of other people that we definitely could have added into this list. But we wanted to keep it at like the top 35, top 40 at most. Because once you start getting below that, you're not going to be in a high tier no matter how you spin it. There is value in people like Singletary and stuff just because they're an RB1. But it's debatable to begin with. And I'm hoping Tyrone Tracy starts to eat into Singletary's carries in some capacity. Selfishly.
Yeah.
I'll just be surprised if that
obviously
happens. What?
the next tier down from this is obviously running backs who are rookies or second-year players that you're praying that they break out or there's an injury. So
Yep.
we wanted to leave it at like definite people who will be getting playing time this year to some degree, whether they're RB2s or RB1s. So there's value here. I personally lean younger when it goes to running backs in Dynasty, just because when they get hit by that age cliff, it is fast and they will lose all their value. It's
Yep.
you can get
Actually,
lucky.
kind of crazy. Not everyone
Yeah.
can be Frank Gore.
No, very few are. Well, now we have Frank Gore Jr., so we should have added him to the list. But
Yeah, we should. Yeah, I don't think he would have made it into these tiers. not not as of now, anyway. But all right, we'll wrap this one up here, guys. Obviously, as always, we'd love to know your thoughts. Please leave them down below. Did we mess anyone up? Are you mad because we didn't put Gibbs or Saquon or Taylor in the S tier? Please remember when you argue with us that this is for Dynasty. If this was redraft, these would shift around 100%. All right. There's more of immediate return for one season. So just as a quick example, Kamara would rise up. All right. Josh Jacobs would probably rise up. There's more value in those people because you're only going to have them for 1 year. And there's not going to be a cliff that you most likely will have to worry about in 2024. So, all right, guys. We'll see you guys in the next video. We hope you enjoyed it.